Good Thursday afternoon, folks. Welcome to the Fireside Chat, the flagship edition of the show. It's Thursday, October 27th, 2022. What's going on? I'm Zack Heydorn, PWTorch Assistant Editor, with my partner in crime, as usual, Tyler Sage. What's up, man?
Hey, not much. The ratings are late. Usually they're like right on time as we start the show here. So I am trying to
Still not out?
Correct. Trying to keep everyone abreast of the situation, but I will let you know when that happens. I assume at best it's flat, at worst it's kind of down, but we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, I don't know. Like, if you weren't gonna watch the show anyway, I don't know what the hook would be. But if you were going to watch, like, it was a pretty good show on paper. Oh, there we go. 997.
I'm curious what
pretty good number. I don't know what the demos were.
Yeah, probably a point 0.35, somewhere like that.
It usually is. It usually is. So, what's up, everybody? Zach, what's going on? Steve, what's going on? Dr. Ross, what's going on? Thanks for being here, you guys. Appreciate it. Dude, we kind of have a lot to get to because
I would say,
I mean, yeah, like I think, as we were talking offline, like it's a kind of an AEW centric week, with some news hitting out of there. No, Zach, we're not going to be friends anymore. Starting tomorrow, Friday, going to the weekend. No more. Sorry. But yeah, man, like it's just a busy kind of week news-wise, without either company really like building to a show that's imminent this weekend, So I kind of think between that happening, it's kind of like, all right, like we got to go to some of the new stuff, and none of it is like stuff we haven't talked about before, but it's just kind of updates to things we've been discussing for the last 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, and that's in lieu of, without this news, I think, unfortunately, we'd be talking a lot about JBL and how he's the worst character on wrestling television across all media. And the go-away heat is strong with him. And
he's lucky,
I know people will be like, that's the point. And I was like, I don't think it is the point. But so good. We don't talk about that. And instead, we can talk about all the flaws of AEW instead. So just know there's WWE fans out there where there's opinions buried deep in there. And that Giant Gargano is failing tremendously the way he's being written on the main roster, in my opinion. So, I think we can be the AEW stuff is more juicy, but the WWE stuff we can also get negative in all fronts. So I just want to make sure that's known out there.
We can. I mean, look, here's the thing: we really can. I don't think that today this week has been a very I don't think it's been a very strong week for either promotion. And for different reasons. I think you got some weird news coming out of AEW. You've got just Monday Night Raw kind of flattening out a little bit, I'd say, like stagnating a bit from the momentum that the Triple H regime had, when they took over. So like a weird event for WWE on the horizon with Crown Jewel. It's always just a weird time of year, when that happens. Oh God, you got to flash that comment up there because
I got you. I mean, you saw when I saw it, and I knew when you said it. So hold on.
Oh my God. You guys, hilarious.
And as Wade said on his recap show, again, fast forward as well, he gave the warning there as well, but block your ears if you don't want to have Giant Gargano ruined. But his inflection is very Disco Inferno-esque, and it was unfortunate to hear that, and now it's going to be hard to break that. So
I blame him for that.
Yeah,
it's like I'm not going to be able to look at Johnny Gargano the same way anymore that I used to. Amos, thanks for checking in. Hazan, thanks for being here as always. Sean, pleasure, my friend. We'll miss your comments, but thank you for being here, tuning in. So just kind of, I don't know, like a little bit of a weird time on the calendar, doubled down with like momentum slowing for WWE's kind of new honeymoon feel. And AEW is still trying to iron out the kinks from that all the craziness of all out. And I think let's start there. Let's start with CM Punk. Wade had a really big update over the weekend, kind of just not necessarily confirming, but surmising that look, like Punk's had his last day in AEW, and they're working on a buyout issue, and the sticking point being the non-compete and what that's going to look like. More so than that, Wade really was able to report on how people feel about CM Punk, and how that went from August of 2021 to where it stood September 2022 in terms of the perception that he had backstage, the value that he brought to AEW from a numbers perspective and a metrics perspective, and then detail from WWE sources kind of going, no, not so interested in that. So, for me, I kind of am at this point with CM Punk where it's like, you gotta grow up. I mean, you gotta just grow up. And I just don't know that you can live your whole life just with the kind of feelings or with the kind of just how you approach your day, where you're constantly on the defensive, constantly, thinking somebody's wronged you in some way or another, constantly cold, and then kind of hypocritical all at the same time. I find it fascinating that this week, today and yesterday, we're talking about, some information leaked from CM Punk, when that was a major crux of the whole rant during his All Out media scrum. So I'm just at this point where it's like, man, it's gotten past the anger, the kind of the frustrated wrestler who wants to be booked better. I think we're even lower than that at this point in time. And I don't know. I just don't know what he brings to the table anymore for as good of a professional wrestler as he is. Can you count on him when this proof is out there?
Yeah. And I mean, all your points, obviously I echo them, so I don't want to reiterate all of them, but if anyone's listened to me for a long time here or another podcast throughout the Torch Network, they knew that CM Punk was very important to me in my rekindling of fandom. I'll do the Cliff Notes version here, but kid growing up, Attitude Era, loved it. Then when you're 12 or 13, you kind of fall out, and that sort of pipe bomb version of Punk was the third Raw I had watched since I came back into watching wrestling. So that was a pretty pivotal moment for me to be like, oh yeah, this is awesome. But all that being said, is that CM Punk sucks as a human being, I would say. And hopefully I'm not, that's just my opinion from everything we're hearing here. I don't see him working well with anybody in any context for a long period of time in wrestling or out of wrestling. The story with the dog having loose teeth, I don't know. Have you ever had a dog, or do you have dogs, Zach?
I had one, and I don't think I would have known one way or the other if he had loose teeth.
Well, yeah. Here's because I've got lots of dogs. I have Chihuahuas.
Okay.
If we want to go real personal here, they get their teeth pulled on a yearly basis because they're little dogs with horrible teeth. But never once have I had a vet come do a normal checkup and be like, "Oh yeah, your dog's two of their teeth are loose, and we need to pull them." So, just saying, as safe as I can be here. That sounds like a bunch of falsehoods being claimed there to kind of get the side of the story. And, it's already been relatively disproven and kind of backtracked by that camp. And then to come out again today, just as the last little, I think there's still people that are team Punk. I think everyone now is kind of team. Everybody was in the wrong and just levels of wrong, right? I think we've all kind of come to that as a wrestling community. But there is, it feels like very much percentage of everyone knows, even if they were tricked in the very beginning on this Punk stuff, that they are, they're aligned with his intentions and what he's trying to do. And, I think the getting out of the contract and getting paid and riding off into the millionaire sunset is what he's trying to do. And yeah, I mean, I think like everything you said, if he appeared, let's say, I don't know, not this WrestleMania season, but let's say he like appeared at the Rumble in 2024, right? Wherever that's going to be. Like the pop would be good, I guess, because it'd be a long enough distance there, but like totally not worth it within like 3 weeks from whatever story they're telling. If he's not instantly going to defeat whoever the champion is at WrestleMania, just like, yeah, all the whole thing all the way around it. I think just collectively, I'm done, you're done, we're done with the CM Punk stuff, and I think wrestling would be better if he just kind of went away because he's kind of, you know, ruined his legacy with this as well.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think you had one shot for a CM Punk return to like get like the biggest value out of it. Like, yes, it'll be if he goes back to WWE, we'll talk about that in a minute. You get another kind of mini shot at that, and a little bit of a different shot at that because WWE is such a different company, and I think that there's value. CM Punk's value in WWE, I think, is different than it is or was for AEW for a multitude of reasons. And again, we'll get into that. But yeah, I don't think it doesn't have the same impact. It's not going to be like the Rampage pop. It's, you know, because it's just not going to be. And like before, you knew that like he had backstage issues. You knew that he was prickly. You knew that he, you know, carried himself in a certain way in certain circles that wasn't, you know, very professional or inappropriate. But you knew because you heard about it, but now you've seen it. You've seen it front and center. And like that changes the perception, like very much so. Like there, you know, it's one thing to hear about it and go, oh, well, it's kind of BS. Like WWE sucks and Vince McMahon's the worst. And so, but now that you've seen it in place, it's like, I don't think he doesn't mean the same thing to people anymore because most wrestling fans are like good people and look at that and go, that guy's a dick. Like, and there's no other way about it. And I think you can look, there's plenty of jerks in every profession, right? I mean, there's no, like, it's not exclusive to pro wrestling, but I just don't think people would look at him the same way, you know, even if he were to come back in AEW. I just don't get that sense. And it's so, I don't know. I feel like part of me is like, I don't feel bad for CM Punk, but I just kind of like feel bad knowing that like there's somebody like that out there that just can't get, someone so talented, but can't get out of his own way. And it's kind of has this, you know, he had this legacy if he didn't come back, right? And that would have been there, you know, and now that's totally changed. And to go from that to like now releasing weird things about his dog getting like injured, it's like, dude, like, just there's nothing wrong with kind of owning up to it and going, hey, look, I messed this up. I regret it. It was a bad decision. I was angry. I was hurt. But it doesn't excuse what I did. And I don't know what's going to happen, you know, but I'm going away for a little bit. I'm going to heal this injury and then figure out what happens from here. But I'm sorry. And, you know, it shouldn't have been that way. Like, that's the adult thing to say. Like, nothing's come out, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but nothing's come out where it's like, wow, yeah, Punk had every right to do that. Even if like, hey, Adam Page went off script, even if, you know, the Young Bucks were leaking, you know, incorrect news tidbits to Dave Meltzer, like, you still don't do what he did. He could be right on those fronts. And I think he is. I would not put up with that, you know, if I was him in a professional setting, but I would not air those grievances next to my boss the way that he did at a media scrum press conference after winning the world title. Like, you have to be able to look into the mirror and be able to tell yourself, yeah, that was not the right way to do this. I'm sorry for that. And I just don't think he has that in him. And it's going to be kind of what puts the final nail in the coffin of his career.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the person that would apologize for doing what he did is not the person that would also make it the Real Housewives of AEW, like he did on the stage there during the briefing, right? I mean, so they're one and the same. As that person is not going to be the person to, say like, hey, I did the wrong thing. Everything you said, like that'd be perfect, right? He could do what he did exactly, have the issue with them in the back. He could then come out and say like a joint statement on AEW's Twitter, whatever, go away, heel, come back. And he'd probably be a heel, but when he comes back, it could still be worth it and make the money. And it just, to me, feels like a guy who was, ready to get that, get the settlement on his contract, even if it's 80% or close more or 100, whatever it is. Like, that's just what he feels like to me, as a guy who was over it, came back, didn't like that he wasn't treated like the god of pro wrestling that he was. That's just all me inferring things. But it's just, I don't know. I mean, I know I talked about it the day after when we did that Monday morning after the scrum, which is still one of the favorite shows I've ever done with you. And it's still on there. Like, I encourage people to go back there. Like, I'm pretty proud about both of us being like pretty right. I mean,
pretty right on.
Perfect on anything, but we had a good vibe on that. So not to toot our own horns, but I'm going to toot it right there. But
but real quick though. I mean, I think that's what I mean about, like, if you just look at that, and even if you're not even a wrestling fan and you don't know any of the backstory of it, like, you cannot watch that media scrum and go, that's the way this should be handled, because it's just not how you handle yourself, period. And so I think, like, in some way, I'm proud of us too, but it's also like, like, of course, that's how we should have reacted, because that's like the logical way to look at that situation and go, wait a minute, wait. Doesn't matter what you're saying. It just doesn't. Mm-hmm. You don't say it in that format, and you don't say it in that way. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, you're good. And I mean, as well as anyone, like the highest levels of the wrestling new media, whatever you want to call it, space, we are all biased in our own ways. And that's why I like to present my biases when I can, so people know where I'm coming from. And, it's easy to be like, pick a side in that battle, and then as opposed to finding the nuance, which I think we did. So, on that too, the last thing on Punk in general on that thing is, like, the thing with the dog, why I bring it up is, I think one thing you can look when you work, especially when you work with people, you got to look for like the little things that people do, and like the little things of like eating the food on the stage. Like, that's just like a big sign of disrespect for anyone that's not him. The backtracking of the thing with the door getting kicked open, and then now coming in and saying the door gets kicked open and it injured my dog to get sympathy, because that's the last remaining things that all humans are basically anti-hurting dogs, right? Hopefully. And it's just those little tiny, those white lies, those whatever, and allegedly white lies. I'm not trying to get anyone out here against me here, but it's just all those little things that tell you exactly what you need to know about a person that they are letting us see. And I think it just tells, like, when Wade reported, if you're not VIP, you should go and listen and read the article. I think Wade was days ahead of some other sites that are getting more acclaim online. So if I can stand
they shouldn't be. He had a lot of that first. Yeah.
So but if you do that in kind of the poll, as you referenced earlier too, of the people that would want Punk back, I think they saw a lot of those same things as well. And it is what it is. So I mean, we're kind of just laying it thick on Punk here, but I think it's deserved.
It is. I think it is, and I want to go to some comments in the chat here, because I think there's some good ones from Derek here. I don't feel bad for Punk. I do feel bad for the fans and people that stood up for him. He portrayed their support. I think there's some truth to that. I think there's some truth to that. Like, where it's like, when does it become that, like, did you really want to be back, or did you really just want to use the comeback and the fan interest in it and make money? And that's part of it, no question. I mean, that's why everybody works, right? I mean, that's part of it, a big part of it. But there's that, and then there's not being authentic, and he kind of, I think, crossed that line. Like, I also sometimes hear, and this is stream of consciousness, but it's like, what the hell did he think was going to happen? Like, even if they don't have a brawl backstage, I still think that you have to put Punk on the firing line after that press scrum, because of what he said, how he said it, and how he treated Tony Khan. Like, like it's just there's no way you could walk into that situation and go, you know what, I'm going to do this and it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Unless the hubris level is just like through the roof, which I think, with him it is. The other thing I want to jump in here and share, and I think this is really interesting from Steve. People who supported him had, as true as it may have been or wasn't, the crutch to blame a chunk of it on Vince McMahon, and you didn't have that this time. I think there's a lot of truth in that too, where it's like, okay, it wasn't his fault. It wasn't his fault. Of course he's frustrated. He's over in WWE and he's not the main guy. Vince McMahon, it's Vince McMahon. And now there is no Vince McMahon. And you hear the same type of issues. And so I think that's really an interesting tidbit there too. Thanks, Steve. Good stuff. In regards to Punk, and like the other thing that if I'm Tony Khan, I'm considering here is Punk. Like if he was a guy that took you from 850,000 viewers regularly to 1.6 million viewers regularly, there's a very good argument to figuring out a way to keep that guy like on your roster, because he doubled up your viewership or close to. That wasn't the case. And I know he impacted business metrics that aren't ratings, merch sales, pay-per-view buys. That's there. He was positively impactful on the business. But was he positively impactful on the business to offset him being a huge pain in the ass? That I don't know. I don't know that you can make that argument, because the ratings skyrocketed for a bit and then they didn't. Pay-per-view buy rates jumped on that all out pay-per-view, and then they stayed up there, but they were they didn't stay at 225,000 buys or 250,000 buys either. So like if you're Tony Khan, and you got to look at that too on the balance sheet and go, is it worth it? Is the increase in business worth the problems that he's causing backstage?
Yeah.
And I guess he decided no.
Yeah. And I would certainly guess no. I'm not in the brain of Tony Khan. I've not asked him personally, but if I were Tony Khan, I'll just give you my opinion that that whole situation, if for any human, was probably the first time he was like, man, I don't absolutely love coming to work every day at this point because of what has happened here. And it's not also not just Punk, but a lot of things happening at the same time. But, even during the pandemic and coming out of it, it seemed like no matter what was going on, good or bad, ugly, Tony Khan seemed to be having the time of his life. And this is the first time that, it just kind of, you can tell he's doubled down on the people he trusts and not using the people he doesn't trust, and kind of being like, all right, I need to, go back to basics, right? We've all heard it in a job where something's underperforming and then some crappy manager wants, we're going back to the basics on this one. And that's kind of the where it is. But certainly, intangibly, if it's something you love and put all your time and effort into, and someone else makes it something that you don't feel that way about, there's no way to put any sort of ratings number or dollar figure number, if I'm Tony Khan, to make that worth it. So I think that's a good point by you. Also, on who I feel bad for, did you see this right before all this happened? It was like the Friday before, or maybe the Wednesday before All Out. There was like a pre-order, this like $200 CM Punk hockey jersey.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
But I feel bad for anyone that ordered that, because I know Pro Wrestling Tees, I doubt there's a refund issued for that. So if you have that, I guess it's a collector's item. But yeah, yikes on that. That's who I feel bad for.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what about his value in WWE? Like, I think, like you said at the top, to me, he has different value there. Like they're more of a content company than AEW at this time, and they own so much Punk content. So like I think about like the stuff they could do with him on Peacock, right? Like the day of show, and he comes back to WrestleMania, all like the different interview shows that you could do with him on that. Like he holds a lot of value in that regard. Do they need him? I would say no, they don't need him, but they don't really need anybody. And so like I think it would be interesting for him to go there. But I think if he went there, he's right in the same place as he was when he left, like, which is upper, lower main event scene, like he's not going to be the guy. He's not going to be Roman Reigns. He's not going to be like Brock Lesnar, or I mean, yes, he could be, but I don't see him in that same vein. I think, I just for whatever reason, I mean, he could sign a deal like that, yes, but I still don't think it would be like I think he'd be more like Edge than he would Brock Lesnar, I guess is what I'm getting at. And it's interesting because that's been his perpetual spot in WWE. And even as you look towards a comeback here, for as much value as he has on the content side, being the guy on the marquee with all the other players around, I still don't think he's that. He's up there, but he's not that guy.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think looking at realistically from my perspective is, what sort of, oh, what's happening? Is that you keeping it up? Anyway,
yeah,
sorry,
that's a
technical issue. Is where he goes, right? So it is CM Punk going to be on Monday Night Raw playing bangos with Matt Riddle and going to be loving that for more than a week or two, right? No, right? There's no way he's doing the week in and week out, listening to Paul Levesque, who he hates, as he hates most people probably hates Bruce Pritchard, if I had to guess, all that stuff. But so the only other way it works is if you have him be Goldberg, you have him be Undertaker, you have him be a guy who comes in once or twice a year, does 3 or 4 weeks on TV and has a match. And then, I wouldn't put it past him, but that seems to be the anti-Punk that Punk railed against all the way back then. But does money, does time change somebody? If so, I mean, he's a heel for that reason in lots of ways, and you can run with that. But it's more just like you said, if you need more content, if he's available, there's not a ton of guys in his age group who are not signed to AEW that are kind of that nostalgia pop for WWE, that next generation after, the Goldbergs, the Undertakers, the people like that now are in their late 40s and can wrestle like that for 6-7 years, right? He fits that bill completely. It's just all the human resource aspect of it, and not just like he's going to cause human resource issues, just like the time and necessity it takes to build that up and deal with it backstage. And it's got to be some one-offs here and there, but even then that's got diminishing returns as we've seen. And so I don't know. I don't think there's great value, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see it. Like I said, the Rumble 24. If it needs a pop and Punk's number 27, I think it's fine. But I think no matter what, it's always going to feel like a watered down version of what CM Punk was, which is a negative.
Yeah. It's just fascinating that this is the tone that's around him. Because if you go back a year, it's totally different. It's man, he's gonna be this big boost of business, and fans love him. And he just made his return and had a decent little match with Darby Allin, and now to where it's at, it's a pretty, like, when you look back at it, it's a pretty epic fall from grace. Like, it didn't take a lot of time, because also remember, he was gone for 3 months in the summer. Like, so he wasn't even around for a full year. He was like active in AEW for like 9 months. And it fell off a cliff. It's amazing. It's amazing to me. Let's talk about the Elite a little bit, because they're involved here too. I don't want to let they don't, in my eyes, they don't get off scot-free here either. And I think they're being handled in a way that says that, they've been gone for a while. But they were not the ones on that stage, running down Tony Khan and running down the company and running down other stars. So there's certainly a difference there. But I'm kind of in the position to say now that, like, if you're Tony Khan, you got to flex your muscle. You got to make sure that they know what they're walking back into, which is Tony Khan's company, and that kind of stuff's just not gonna fly. I may even like not mess around, but I may look at the EVP titles and go, okay, you needed to be an EVP when the company started. Do we need that today? I don't know what the answer is, but I may look at that. But I think it may be time for them to come back, at some point. And it looks like we're on that path with the kind of the teaser video of them disappearing played yesterday on Dynamite. So I think we're on that track. And I think it's probably an okay time to do that. Where are you at with them and they're rolling all this and also them coming back?
Yeah. And on these sort of questions, I think if I was Tony Khan, what would be my answer with Truth Serum, right? So that is, I think you hit it on the nail on the head, the EVP title. I mean, Cody left, so that EVP title was kind of not transferable, but it's not like it was a lifelong commitment to be a stakeholder in the company, right? It's just a title. You don't have any equity in the business. So I think that is all but certain that you have to try and get that title off of them. If that is, all their deals are up. Kenny's a little later due to the injury, but if that's part of their new deal, that they are not executive vice presidents, if you can, go somewhere else, I think that's the main thing you need to do to avoid legal issues, right? Because I think you can trust these guys, but that's a huge issue with this Punk thing, is that management came and confronted him, right? I mean, from on paper, if you don't watch wrestling or know any of the details, which is whoever is going to be the arbiter of this decision, they have no idea. They're just like, okay, yeah, you have vice presidents coming in to your sitting room when you're at work with your family. It looks bad on paper if you don't know what's going on with all the context. So that being part of that, like, hey, they're stripped of their title and we paid out your contract. That can all be worked that way, whatever. But them coming back as talents, yeah, I think it's time. It seems like per reporting, the sides have been chosen, the line's been drawn. Them coming back makes sense. This seems like a story, as Hazan has mentioned a couple times here. Is TK the Thanos of AEW? And I think in a lot of ways he probably is. And I think that was approved by him because he probably thought it was funny, but has some things there as well. He's probably the reverse Thanos, right? He's bringing in half the wrestling world to AEW, not taking out half the wrestling world, but it's reverse Thanos, I would say. But yeah, so who brings them back? What's the story there? That feels very much like a being the elite segment to decipher that, which is more of the same problem. But I guess I'm more interested in what are they when they come back, right?
Right.
Are the Young Bucks?
I was gonna say, yep.
Yeah. Are they putting over every tag team they need to? Is Kenny having good matches but not? I don't know. It's just like I'm excited for them to come back, but I don't know. We'll see what happens, but they just have not booked themselves well, not been used correctly by really the company. So, it'll be a good moment when they come back, but I just don't know if there's a long-term trajectory of being super bullish on what they are. Not that I want them to go to WWE or anything, but if it's more of the same, it all feels kind of past AEW and not current AEW, which is, good and bad in different ways. But yeah, so
that's well said, and I agree. Like if I'm Tony Khan and they're coming back, I'm telling them, like, look, you guys are coming back, but we're doing things differently. We're not doing any of this like drama. This like, is the elite getting along? Are they not getting along? Or like this whatever story with Adam Page and this nuance and I'm scrapping all that. Like, and I'm booking them like pro wrestlers. That's what I'm doing if I'm Tony Khan. And if they don't have any interest in that, then I don't think they're valuable to the company at this point anymore, because it's like the Young Bucks are the best tag team in the world. They're not going to be the best tag team in the world forever. So put them on TV so that they can be that. Just that. Book them that way. Promote them that way. Promote them in that fashion. That's what I'm doing with them. Kenny, same thing. Like I get him in a feud with somebody that he hasn't feuded with before, like Malachi Black or somebody like that. Some kind of like long 3-month kind of personal grudge type feud that has a couple really great Kenny Omega matches inside of it, and you go from there. So like that's what I'm doing with them. I'm treating them as not EVPs, not as like as foundations of the business side of the company, but top talent in the company strictly. And that's how I'm using them, because I think that's where you get that's how you get the most out of them at this point. Because look, the EVPs, not EVPs, whatever, they're pro wrestlers, they're talent on that show at this point. And so if I'm Tony Khan, I'm treating them as such. And I think that's where they can succeed best too.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, taking that out, I think the EVP thing, we look to be on the minority of the chat here on that, which is fine.
Yeah, I guess we are.
It's just like, to me, it doesn't really matter if I'm watching as a fan and for the general audience, right? That's more of like if I'm Tony Khan, and legally, I think that is like showing, some things there. If you're worried about a Punk lawsuit down the line or whatever, like you sided with them completely, whatever. That's why you negotiate all the stuff out before you do anything with them, so you don't get sued on the side there. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. And like Hazan had here in the comments, Ricky Starks versus Kenny that'd be like a great feud. And then like I think Ricky goes over and you make a guy or two with some of these guys, and because they're still Teflon no matter what. Like they come back, you don't make them lose right away. They're not Carl Anderson, but you have them do something, and in general, you have them be guys that are foundational from like the lore of your company, right? They are the guys still around that were there at the very beginning, as they showed with the video there. It was a lot of their highlights and them, at the press conference to announce the company and whatnot. So having that is important. But yeah, I mean, if they help usher in the next generation of AEW, that's the best way to use them. And then you can occasionally, activate them again. I mean, just like Kenny, not yet, but in some light version of what AJ Styles is for WWE right now, is kind of the mold I would put him in. Like, you have him in big moments, he has big matches, but he may be a champion again. I don't think out of the question is to put him on Ring of Honor and buoy that thing. If you do a weekly program there, that can kind of be a project to get people over that. It's obviously going to get less viewers than AEW. And if they're those kind of stars that come back and kind of restructure that show, I don't know. I think that'd be a good use of them too. But no matter what, I think them coming back, being wrestlers, Tony Khan dictating their booking, because whether you like it or not, you can tell that the booking recently has been at least a little bit more paint by numbers, which I think it was kind of needed for things, and not as aloof in certain ways. And some of us might like nuance in our wrestling, and I'm probably more in that camp, but from a general standpoint, I think it'd be good for them just to have, like you said, a straight up feud, because the most straight up Young Bucks feud is FTR maybe, and then the most straight up Kenny feud in AEW is Hangman. But I'd be hard pressed if anyone could give me like the 5 beats of that story chronologically. Besides,
you can't. You can't. It's there. So, you can, if you spend a lot of time, you could probably piece it together, but it's not easy to follow.
But at the same, like you said, just like a straight up story with somebody would help them both all tremendously, and then go from there. So I think there's stuff to do. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's stuff to do, and we're gonna talk about this Derek comment here, because I think it's super interesting. And real quick, this idea of nuance, you can have nuance that makes sense, and that means something. But you can also have nuance that just muddies the waters, and that is just there for nuance sake. And I think we get too much of that kind of nuance in AEW. Nuance in wrestling is good, but it has to be well done, or else it messes things up if you don't handle it right. And I think the Adam Page Kenny Omega story, some of the nuance hit, some of it very much missed. And to me, when that misses, it stands out more so than when it hits, because when nuance hits, it's like, it's small. Not everybody sees the nuance. But when it misses, I think you're left going, wait, what? Like, why? Like why did that all happen again? And I think you got to be careful with it, and you have to be able to do it right for it to work. So I mean, nuanced wrestling is good. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying it's got to be buttoned up. Okay, let's get into this. Derek, coming in hot with the AEW tenure of Kenny Omega has led me to ask, was he really ever as good as he was hyped to be? He's a great in-ring wrestler. Many of those have come and gone. That is not enough to be a mega star. Do you want to go first on this one, Tyler, or do you want me? Because I certainly have my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, you go first. I'm curious what you think, because I'm more a pro Kenny than you are, I think, in general. So I'd like to hear what you said.
Well, I mean, I hope that's not the perception that I give off, is that I'm not pro Kenny, because I am. My root is I just don't think we've seen it yet here. Like, I think he has all the potential to be a mega star, but he just consistently in AEW has kind of erred on the side of like silliness, erred on the side of goofy, rather than just being a megastar pro wrestler. I don't know that he has interest in being a megastar pro wrestler. Like, I really don't. Like in New Japan, New Japan like kind of tempered all of the Kenny quirkiness, and he didn't do a lot of that. Like, he just went out there and had really good wrestling matches because that's what the New Japan product is, but episodic television in the United States in AEW is different than that. Like, your top star needs other things. And I think Kenny has that, but I don't think he's allowed himself to go there. I think he's tried to stay in the lane that he likes to stay in. And I think that lane doesn't lead to megastar and hasn't led to megastar yet. But I think when you see like flashes of it, or he steps out like, a little bit for a certain promo, or, the exploding barbed wire death match, like you see pieces of, man, that megastar is there. But to me, it's like he just he catches himself and goes, nah, I just want to stay here. I just want to do my thing. And so that limits his potential, I guess. And I don't think we've seen him realize it fully, even if I think he has it in him. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. I mean, so can Kenny Omega be a megastar as a question? I say the answer is no, just in general, for the length of his career. I do think that is, you hit the main point to me, is he really interested? Does he want to be MJF, right? Does he want to be ambitious and do everything he can to be that megastar and make his whole persona something that is that megastar type character? And I just don't think so, right? I think, him and MJF would have similar builds. They're shorter than the typical WWE star, right? But they both are super in shape and look like stars. It's just having that desire to kind of work your whole character around that. And just even as, if push back a little bit on the New Japan cutting down on his goofiness, right? The character that when he went from junior heavyweight to a heavyweight, they gave him the character of the cleaner because they wanted him to be like an assassin type character. And he literally came out with a broom and dustpan and was cleaning the ring, right?
That is so true.
Like, that's like always in his demo. And there as a gaijin, you can get over as a heel easily at first. And then if you work it in the ring, then that gets you over. And it's just a different type of stardom, right? I think, like you've talked about here on the show before, Jay White, Will Ospreay, I think they would also have a hard time being megastars in the States here. I think probably Ospreay would have the best chances being like a super over heel because he can kind of double down and do the worst sort of things and do that. But, if he's in WWE, let's take that, right? Like, where would he be? I think he'd be above, he'd probably be slightly below Matt Riddle, right? In the long term of his career, where he's a guy that's probably going to feature weekly, but may occasionally go for a title, but never be, he can be a tag team champion easily. He can go for lesser titles, but I don't think you ever main event a a major show, and if he does go for the title, it's on a lesser show. And I think that's just kind of his trajectory, and that's all based on where he wants to be. I think in ring, there's no question he can be a megastar, but as we know in pro wrestling, it's a lot more than that, and you kind of have to do different things to get in that position. So,
this is the name that I thought of too, Seth Rollins. That would be like best case scenario. Like if Kenny Omega had a Seth Rollins like career in WWE, that obviously that'd be really good. But at the same time, he could also, I think it's equally as possible, given what we've seen that he wants to do, that he could easily be Shinsuke Nakamura in WWE also. Like I think both are equally as likely, I guess. And it just depends on what he wants to do. I mean, in ring, man, when that guy wants to go, I mean, nobody can touch him. I mean, he's like the moveset and the crispness, the drama, the selling. It's all just, I mean, it's unreal, But I really think like in an episodic environment, which is what AEW is, you got to be able to go different places, and I just don't think we've seen it yet, even though I do think, do you think he has it in him? Like, maybe not now because of his age, but like, we've seen him at the top of AEW. Like he's been the world champion. He had the company, not on his shoulders because it's an ensemble company for the most part, but he held the world title. But the run, even from a match perspective, that title run wasn't what I think people expected it to be when you heard, oh, wow, Kenny Omega is going to be on national TV in the States every week. I don't think we saw kind of him reach those expectations that maybe were too high. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think you answered your own question right there, right?
I think I did. Yeah.
That like, I don't know if there were any interviews where someone asked Kenny like, "Hey, do you want to be the biggest wrestling star of the 21st century?" And I don't know how he'd answer that. He would probably have a joke answer about that. But I think like if you're doing like a thought experiment, right? If you were to instead of face off, it's brain off, and you switch the brains of Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega, right? And you put their switch places. Yeah. I think that Kenny Omega could easily be the biggest star in wrestling in a long, long time because of that dedication and character change and things like that. But just I think honestly, I mean, not to like be super defensive of Kenny here, but that's probably where I would be too. Like if you could if you obviously love in-ring stuff, athleticism, and you're super athletic and you can do that, and then you also are kind of a weird, quirky guy, and you can just like be that and not have to be like some fake machismo machine out there. And you only get to be, 8.5 out of 10 of your potential. I don't know. That seems like a pretty sweet gig to me. So I kind of see why he does it. Honestly.
Yeah. Well, totally. I mean, it's for sure. Especially if you're getting paid and you're not working that crazy Japan style and you're doing what you want to do and you're hanging out with your friends, like, who's going to argue with that? I mean, I guess it's just a matter of what you wanted from him. Like if you wanted like that run of 2017, 2018 Kenny Omega in New Japan, I don't think that's coming. I just don't think that is coming. And so it's just a matter of, okay, well, what is on the horizon now? It's an interesting question, though. It's an interesting question. And I think you could say the same thing about the Young Bucks. Like you can also almost have the same discussion that we just had about Kenny Omega and just plug in the Young Bucks name. And I think a lot of that applies. Okay. Good chat. It's a crazy topic, man. The whole Punk thing. I mean, Tony Khan's going to look back at this time and go, man, that was not fun. But there's been like strange, I mean, weirder things have happened in the pro wrestling business. So, you know, it's just a matter of time. Like, I think this stuff happens in wrestling companies. And so, you know, AEW is not going to be immune to these kind of issues with those kind of egos and big personalities and a lot of money going around. Like, you're bound to have that, you know? So,
Yeah. And I would say this is why you want to own the wrestling company, not be an employee for a subsidiary
yes.
of a corporation that owns the wrestling company. Because if Tony Khan is Eric Bischoff in this situation, he's probably fired, and it is what it is for causing this. And if you own the company, you get to learn from that. So I mean, there's two ways it can go. Obviously, more than two. But to simplify it, either AEW is better, 5 years from now because of this, or it's worse. But I think it'll be better in the long run of like making personnel choices and just the size of the roster and how much creative control characters have before they've established that they can do that and all that sort of stuff. All those nuances, who he trusts around him, that are key allies behind the scenes. So I think in the long this you'll probably see some AEW propaganda documentary where this was the crucial moment and how the fearless leader came through, all that stuff. Just like we get in WWE. So
sure, you probably will. And but let's keep it with a different topic, and one that I'm shocked by a couple things concerning this, and that's MJF. Last night on Dynamite, we saw MJF kind of come out and cut a little bit of a babyface promo that I thought was a babyface promo that tried really hard to not lose the essence of the MJF kind of character and personality. And I thought he did a decent job of walking that line. But then later in the show, he runs out, he makes the save on Jon Moxley, and then gets beaten up and put through a table by the Firm. And I watched that, and I said to myself, okay, like MJF is a babyface, like clearly, plain and simple. There is no doubt, like at this point. And man, when I look at the polls that we're doing at PWTorch on the PWTorch Twitter feed, let me read you some of this stuff. Right now, where do you want to see, or do you think MJF, after last night's Dynamite, is clearly a babyface, pretending to be a babyface, still a heel, too difficult to read? All right, those are the options.
Give it to me one more time.
So we got clearly a babyface, pretending to be a babyface, still a heel, and too difficult to read at this point.
Okay.
So those are the four options. There's only 138 votes in, so we got to take that for what I see. You know what? Let me refresh here to get the most updated numbers possible. If we're gonna talk about this and go down this rabbit hole. Okay, 148 votes in.
There you go. Thanks everyone for voting while watching this.
Yes, thank you. How do you want this to go? You want to guess?
Yeah, I'll guess. I would guess 2 personally.
That'd be your guess as to what's the highest amount?
No, I'm saying that would be my personal choice.
That's your vote.
That
really?
he's a heel who's acting like a babyface, and just because I don't trust MJF, the human being, and Tony Khan not to add just too much to the story to make it work.
Well, then I definitely am in the minority for sure, because
but that's not what I think is the answer by everyone. I think the guess would be he's a babyface now. That'd be the number one.
No.
Okay.
The answer's with you, and by a wide margin. 13% clearly a babyface, 10.9% still a heel, 14% too difficult to read, 62% pretending to be a babyface. I mean,
remember he told Renee to shut up during this.
I know, but that's. I mean, Steve Austin stunnered Santa. Like,
yeah, but that's not out. That's not what's his name?
So it's in character for MJF to insult, to call Renee stupid, and the crowd cheered it.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, obviously, he should be a babyface because here's like my ultimate worry and where I think this is going at this exact moment. If you will indulge me in some potential fantasy booking, but it's not what I want to happen. I just want to make a disclaimer there, so don't cut this up.
Sorry, so guys, this is what Tyler wants to happen. This is how he would.
So my vibe is like he's not using the ring, but him and William Regal are in on this whole thing together, and Regal is going to hit Moxley with the brass knuckles, and MJF's going to win that way, and then they're going to be a group or something like that. And yeah, just like Amos said here, he's still saying like, hey, where are my devil worshippers at? You know, the devil's here, all that sort of stuff. It's just like, I don't know, man. It makes too much sense to, in my mind, it's so low hanging fruit to have him just win straight up, earn that face thing like he did last night, and just ride off into the sunset as the babyface he truly is. But I think deep down in his heart, he knows like he needs to do this, and I don't think he does need to do this. I just think this is what the vibe I'm getting there is, that he needs to do that ultimate swerve, and all this is building for this moment to get the people on their side. And then, but even then, like, let's say that does happen, like he's going to get cheered.
Yeah,
for doing
that. He will.
Yeah. So that's why I don't know. I mean, that's why it's like I can be convinced. Like, obviously, I think that would happen. Like, no matter what he does, he could beat up Tony Schiavone. He could beat up Excalibur. He could beat up Taz. He could, beat up some old lady in the front stands, and then he could, punch William Regal and, use the dynamite ring on Moxley and have the firm come in and help him, and he'd still get cheered. So like,
I know.
So there is like, obviously what happened last night, him coming in to save him, like it has to be that. But I just like am so worried. So I'm just like, I'm just setting my expectations for like this being a big swerve, and everyone to be like, all right, I guess we're here. And then
that's how people will react. Like, I mean, I look here. Here's the deal. I totally sympathize with what you're saying. Like, you're right. And I don't even if you take recent booking into account, AEW as a company doesn't really get the benefit of the doubt in terms of like being able to play this out and play this through based on what we've seen, like the stuff with Cody and not kind of recognizing the tide of the fans and turning towards that. Daniel Garcia, I think, is another one where you're kind of like, okay, this should have been going a different way.
Jamie Hayter too.
Jamie Hayter, I was going to say same thing.
Sorry.
And it's like, you can't miss on this one. They can't miss here because look, Moxley will get hurt by this. MJF will get hurt by this. I mean, nobody will walk out in a better position. I promise you that. Like, and that's why. And I guess I just am thinking to myself that MJF has more self-awareness as a performer than somebody like Cody, for example, who maybe is just who felt just kind of fascinated with a reaction and like didn't really care one way or the other. But I don't get the sense that MJF looks at it that way. Like, I think when he's his heel, he want to get heat, lots of it, all the time. And he put together, a character and a program, and like the guy, it seems to me like he's always working, like because he's just this jerky guy. And I think that worked. And I like to think that he can hear the audience and go, okay, like this isn't going to work. Like this is not going to work. It can work in a vacuum, but long term, and it just won't happen. Because even if you want it to stay heel, whatever move you make is getting cheered. And I kind of just think he recognizes that. But I mean, obviously, I could be very wrong about this for sure.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll say. Everything that was on the screen last night, if you just watched that and dropped into the show, obviously that guy's a babyface, and that's the direction they're going with the story the last couple of weeks. I don't think they've done anything, wink and nod wise to like try. They're like being straightforward, like, hey, he is going to be a face. So all that is like obvious, right? I'm not saying I'm seeing something differently than everybody else here. Mm-hmm. It's just that there is like an inkling in my mind that MJF wants to be Hulk Hogan, Bash of the Beach 1996. He wants to be Matt Cardona defeating Nick Gage and getting just like trash thrown in the ring at him and being the ultimate heel. Like that to me is the one thing in life he probably wants more than anything than than all the money and all the other stuff, is to be an iconic heel in that sort of vein that people will refer to for 25, 30, 50 years. Right. I mean, how, maybe not people in their teens right now, maybe won't reference Bash to the Beach, but that's a pretty iconic moment. And I think that is something MJF wants to do. And this is basically the peak of being able to do that is doing it here. That again is not good. I think they should just go straight forward, have him win as a face, give Moxley some time off, and put the company on his back, as Wade has inferred, not reported. He thinks there's an extension in place already, or else you wouldn't do this. So that to me is like, you can tell, maybe if you want to be MJF and do that, you can tell that story next year and just do your face run here now and then figure it out from there. But just, it's just a gut feeling. It's the vibes, right? The vibes are that, like, I think it might be the worst case scenario that we're kind of laying out here to get the big swerve, and we'll see what happens. I hope not, but that's my gut instinct at the moment. Obviously, based on the percentage there, at least 105 other people, or 95, somewhere in that range, out of the people voting, think the same thing, which is not great that everyone that watches the show weekly can have the same sort of thought process that I've had.
I was shocked. I mean, I really was shocked. Like, I know that it's only 148 votes or whatever it is, but I just
those are people watching a lot, right? They're like you and I, right? They're
yeah.
So it's like people that are really, really into this are thinking this is what's going to happen, which is like, I mean, that's how Tony Khan and MJF think about wrestling. They think about it the way we do. So that's just something.
But if you're telling a story though like this, like, I guess where I'm at on that is, if that's who the audience you're trying to like appease and appeal to, then you're not swerving them.
Yeah.
Really. So the real swerve is just going with them as a babyface. Like, if you think about it,
Yeah. I mean, well, the real swerve is to have kind of what I just laid out, but you have Regal hit MJF with the brass knuckles, and Moxley takes advantage and wins that way. And not that you want to turn or not that you want to turn Moxley heel, but like, if you have MJF fight honorably and lose, then there's two paths to go, which is what I think is the best path, honestly, for me, is he loses fighting valiantly, and then you have two paths you can go. He either overcomes those odds as the ultimate babyface, or he, diverges down into being a heel and then wins in a heel way to win, which I think is less exciting. But I think if you have him turn face, having him climb the mountain, unlike kind of what you did with the CM Punk character, where there was really no story of him climbing a mountain like you had with Hangman Page and more so with Moxley this past year. I think that's a better way to tell a babyface storyline. So sorry to cut you off, but I just want to
No. If the swerve is where they're going with this, I also just have to say, I gotta say, I think if the swerve is what they're going for, it's bad booking. Like, just even if that's where they want to go, bad, because what you've created all this investment in MJF in wanting to see him win the title the right way. And I think to me, like, I don't know that you want to go all in on that story if you're not going to pay it off, because it'll have a diminishing return on the swerve, because I think people will just be disappointed that they didn't get to see MJF win the title, like, to big fanfare, and instead just kind of water it down without the heat. And I think that's a moment that you really don't want, like real disappointment with fans, as opposed to, just heat on MJF for being a slimy piece of crap. I can't see an end game where they get there at this point. And I think that's the problem that I have with it if you drill it down.
Yeah. So obviously I agree with that crowd reaction you're going to get, and then the reaction that we're going to have, et cetera. But let's say you have, MJF has never won a fight cleanly, right? So from a psychology standpoint, shouldn't he? I would say, shouldn't he lose the first time he tries to win? Like based on his skill alone. So let's say you do that, you take that to its logical conclusion. You have Moxley defeat him barely because they went one-on-one based on no tomfoolery. You're probably going to get the same reaction from the crowd, right? If Moxley beats him clean,
right? Which is why I'm putting MJF over clean.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do. And I wouldn't do it because it makes the most logical sense from a storyline, bro. Because you're right. Like I think, it's kind of like, okay, you're telling this story, and now all of a sudden he's going to win this match out of the blue. He's never won a match like that. You're right as far as that goes, but I think what's more valuable to consider in that situation is just the momentum that he has, that you want to feed at the right time, I guess is what I'm saying. And it's like, I wouldn't want to pass on that. That's what I think you've got kind of lightning in the bottle, and you hit on that at the expense of the logic that would run counter to it. So I guess, that's why I say that. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. And that makes total sense. I just, I kind of always argue the other side of AEW title matches because they always are kind of foregone conclusions in lots of ways at pay-per-views. So I guess that's kind of more, again, my bias coming in there to argue the other side here. But I think it's a better story. I think I'm in the minority there, but having MJF climb that mountain. But yeah, it would be disappointing in the moment, and you'd have to do that. I mean, there was someone up in the comments earlier said Eddie has been interesting lately with kind of his comments, and he picked Moxley last night to win over Penta, who's his other friend. So something intriguing you could do there.
Yeah.
With that, I mean, you still have a couple of weeks to tease that out, but there could be people around Moxley that. But anyway, I guess I've shown my hand. That's probably what I would do if I were in call booking it. I'd have MJF lose to then climb the mountain and win at a later date. But your point too, like if you were given your side of the story, it's hard to argue not to just cash in now and do the right thing and not prolong this and hope, who knows what it's going to be, in 3 months. It's hard to do that. And I'm usually more of an advocate for striking while the iron's hot, right? Like getting it on the Acclaimed when they did was the right move, as opposed to, if they were to wait till this pay-per-view to do it, then, would that have
don't know what's going to happen. They could get hurt, I mean, and I think I hope MJF doesn't put too much stock in like that heel moment, because I think the babyface moment that he has, if he wins the world title clean, like I think that's going to be equally as powerful. Like it may be the most powerful moment like to date in AEW. Like I think you could really argue that because, I don't know, like the Hangman thing was fine, but that was an example, and through no fault of Adam Page, you need to be at the birth of your child, no question. So I'm not saying he made the wrong decision, but his momentum slowed, when he left, and so Tony Khan wasn't able to pull the trigger on that at the same time when he should have. Where now you can, and so I think he still gets the memorable moment that he wants, just from a different perspective, at a different scope. I want to just jump here real quick to Tracy's comment. Thanks for joining us, Tracy. Glad you were able to jump in. What do you think this does to Moxley? If MJF beats him clean, I mean, it's once again, Moxley's kind of like this, for transitional champion. I don't mean it in a negative way, but like, he was like the Rock that Tony Khan could go to, and now he's moving on. Does it hurt him?
No, I mean, I don't think so. First of all, I think he'd be gone for a couple of weeks. I think he'll take that vacation that he put off.
Yes.
One would think. But I mean, the same thing just happened with Punk. Punk beat him at All Out, or Double, or whatever, was it All Out? And then they had a tournament, he won it again, right? I mean, he's pretty much, I think, bulletproof on that. It's just giving him something that's worthwhile to do. That's why maybe this Eddie thing might be a thing where maybe they'll go for the tag titles together and be kind of the brawling brutes of AEW, if you will. Kind of two guys that are just going to beat the crap out of everybody. And I think that's a good story to tell. So as long as he's doing something impactful and can cut a promo after the opening match on Dynamite and be impactful and always have a good sense of what's good in pro wrestling and what's going to get over, I think he'll be fine, and you can always put him back in the main title spot again if you need to in the future. So I think that's kind of the problem if you're Jon Moxley, is that like it obviously is best to have the title belt, but I think what I just laid out there is totally reasonable, and it feels like MJF needs to win in this moment, as you've laid out, and it feels like Moxley could always win and is always going to be important no matter what he's doing, and that is kind of a negative when you want to retain something, because you are you can just reheat that person whenever you want to. So
yeah, and I think I am a big believer in not everybody's going to get a chance with the world title,
Mm-hmm.
and if you do get a chance with the world title, like it's there's certain circumstances that go into it, and I think when Jon Moxley won the title first in 2020, like that was his run. Now, unfortunately, no one got to see that in person.
Yeah,
but that was the time to go there with it, and they pulled the trigger on that. And I think Moxley has been champ again and has kind of filled the voids, where Tony Khan has needed it. But those wins have also been surrounded by other things that kind of take precedent over what he's doing. And like the Punk thing, you could argue maybe not, but I still, you had to go with Punk, I think, like, even in hindsight. And now, MJF is on a roll. Like, you don't want to derail that either. So it's like, sometimes it's just, timing is everything. And, sometimes that means you don't get any run with the world title. It doesn't mean you're not successful, but I think that's kind of where he's at, where it's like, all right, yeah, he's been the guy, he's been the filler guy, period. And and I think there's incredible value there. He signed a 5-year contract, with some, I'm assuming, big money. His wife works for AEW now, so I mean, they're like, Tony Khan and the Moxley Paquette family are attached at the hip. I mean, but I still think it might mean that you still put the belt on MJF or anybody else for that matter, if they're hot enough, and you got to make that call. I want to really quick touch on scrolling up here.
Gotcha. Can I say one thing while you're doing that?
Yeah. Go.
So, just to me, and it's not a 1-for-1 comparison. Nothing is in life or wrestling or anything. But to me, if I can try and project a couple years in the future here, the 3 Moxley runs thus far, probably 4 or 5 total, to me really feel like the modern version of the Bret Hart in the early 90s in WWF, where you have a guy who's kind of the rock of the company, not really ever the most over guy in the moment, but is like respected on the back end, and is just kind of there and does whatever you need to. Not the personality stuff on the back end. I think Mox is kind of down for whatever, but it feels like that to me. Like, if you were to live view WWF in the early 90s, I would say that they probably took Bret for granted, I would say. And that's kind of how it feels like in the moment it is for Moxley. Like, everyone respects him, but we're all pretty quick to be like, well, yeah, MJF has to win, of course. Which, that's why I'm probably zagging a little bit by having Moxley beat him this time and then have MJF come back and beat him at a later date. But that's obviously not the majority opinion thus far. So
it's a great comparison, man. I mean, it really is. It's a great comparison, because he very much did fill that void. And you can even go back further than that. Like, I don't know who is the champion. Was Nash? Like, they tried to make Nash, right?
Like 94, 95. Yeah, I mean, you had Shawn, and then you had Nash, and then you had Sid
Brett
for
would
a
like
second
jump in and
there.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's a really good comparison. Good stuff. I like it. Okay, this idea that MJF, how can he be champ if he never wrestles? Good debate going on in the chat. Respectful debate. So good stuff, you guys. Keeping it clean. I like it. He will have to wrestle more. I mean, that to me, that's the bottom. I mean, I don't think you can have a babyface MJF champion that wrestles 7 times. Like, he will have to wrestle more, and I'm sure he will. Like, it makes sense. His schedule makes sense right now based on the character that he has. But if he's babyface, Steve, I wouldn't worry about that. I think he increases the match load pretty significantly, to be honest.
And here's my question: is Lance Archer available for the honorary first title defense match?
Of course he is. Of course he is.
Him and Nyla Rose have that. Like, they should make like title belts for both of them. That you're the first title defense on a reign. Are those two?
Yes, that's definitely on the horizon. MJF versus Lance Archer. You could book it for like some weird, special Dynamite named show.
Yeah, we can have one of those Twitter profiles that makes like the AEW auto book or whatever that makes like 2 random matches in the stipulation. Let's have that, and it'll come to fruition.
I love it. Oh my goodness. All right. Anything else on MJF, man? Because I got a couple rapid fires, and then want to ride.
I would say if this is the only time we're ever going to talk about him, I do, but I think we're going to talk more about him in the coming weeks. So
something tells me we're going to bring him up again. Yeah. Okay, real quick, some WWE rapid fire stuff. I didn't like Raw this week. I thought it was a really slow, plodding show that lacked significant star power. So my rapid fire question is the Triple H shine already off, or you're just going to have these kind of weeks?
Period. Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to have these kind of weeks, especially when you don't have, and again, I'm still pro them only having one world champion, but when you don't have like Lashley on the show or Lesnar or, when the main thing throughout the show, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, it felt like Johnny Gargano was the main focal point of that entire show with how many segments he was a part of, interacting with different characters and then wrestling another character and that sort of stuff. And I just think it showed the lack of top tier like innings fillers, if so to speak, on having that show work out. Like, think of Dynamite right now without MJF having a 15-minute segment every week. I think it would hurt the show tremendously to not have that intrigue of him out there talking. And I think Raw needs something like that, and it's missing. And that's probably not Charlotte Flair coming back. That's probably more of a Becky coming back and doing something impactful.
Cody,
something like that. So I think that's the biggest problem. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it was a lot of the same things that I've talked about here before. The long main event that was going to be. I mean, we talked about on the preview show. I did preview it this Monday, and Zach even tweeted me like, "Thanks for calling the opening segment and making my life miserable with Dominic in the promo." But like, you don't have to watch it. If you watch it enough, you can like basically I laid out the whole show, and I don't have insider information. So I think that's a big problem with the show, and it has been for pre and post fans. So
you guys are cracking me up with that. That was funny. I agree. I also my other just rapid fire topic was going to be on Seth Rollins. Mm-hmm. This guy, man, I don't know what to do with myself. And Seth, I like Seth. Don't know what he's doing right now. And because the star power thing, I think he hurts that by not being like a straight up character. Oh my God, Steven, you're asking for it, my friend. You are asking for it on the chin, Dominic Benefit. So yeah, I just want Seth to wrap it up. I think he could be a star that they lean on if he just buttons it up a bit, but he refuses. So I guess I won't rant on that today. I did it last week.
Yeah, I would say on the two companies, I made a note for myself to make sure I said it. From a storytelling perspective, not in-ring performance, I think AEW and WWE are converse of each other, where I think the weekly small shows, if you will, of AEW are pretty good consistently from telling stories and feel impactful, while their pay-per-views they don't have that same bite. There's not been great moments on AEW pay-per-views, and WWE of recent vintage is pretty skippable week in, week out, but the shows, the pay-per-views have been really good and they've been impactful and exciting. So that's just kind of how I view it at the moment. So
That's
that's
a good
right.
point.
To say like this Raw was not very good, but I still am very bullish on, Survivor Series, Rumble, and Mania all being really, really top tier shows with exciting stuff happening. So it's kind of odd to think of it that way, where like, you don't live and die on the weak stuff, but when those big moments happen, you're like, I think they're going to be really, really good.
Right. Yeah. No, that's an interesting point, and I think you're right. Yeah, I think you could probably pin that on like the talent. Like I think because you got to eventually the matches have to get in the ring, and usually once they do, they're at least exciting. Yeah. So all right, man. Well, look, that's all I had on the list of things to chat about today. I mean, bit heavy on AEW as expected, but yeah, I mean we'll be. Gosh, next week I guess we'll be previewing Crown Jewel.
Yeah, and I guess we haven't talked on air. Are we doing a live show of Crown Jewel? Is that a Saturday, right? At like noon or something?
Yeah, it's Saturday afternoon. Yeah, I am planning on it. Yep, planning on it.
Well, let's confirm it on air here. We'll be doing a live show.
We will be doing a live show during Crown Jewel. So hopefully all you guys can join us for that. Appreciate you all being here live and hanging out with us as usual. A blast. So Ren, Steven, Steve, Dr. Ross is on, Zach, everybody else. Appreciate you guys. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll have I believe. Well, I don't want to say it, but there's another interview that's going to hit the channel probably later tomorrow or Monday. So keep a lookout for that, as well as a host of other cool things as usual. So we'll be back to preview SmackDown tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, Tyler, a pleasure, man, as always. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. We'll catch you next time. See you.